Zdravo! And welcome to another episode
I like that one.
of Buzz Pucks. That's Serbian. I'm Bert.
I'm Clay.
Sorry, I had a
Brain fart.
brain fart there for a second. And like I just said, welcome back to Buzz Pucks. We're here for, I think, week 17, but it's
17.
the All-Star week, basically. So there actually weren't that many games. I think there was only 3 days of games this week.
About.
So what we're gonna do today, instead of having like a really short episode, we're gonna run through the games that happened, or run through what teams did this week, and then we're gonna take a look at the standings, and we're gonna take a look at a trade deadline big board that somebody made, and we're gonna speculate where players might be traded.
Because with some news out of Vegas that we're going to talk about later, moves are going to happen.
True. But before that, what are we drinking, Clay?
Today we are drinking Shiner Bock. It's the closest thing we get to Dallas.
Yeah, that's true. It's fairly close to
Shiner, Texas.
I think it's fairly close to Dallas.
It's like in between Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. So it's
it
like in
counts
the
for
middle
all
of
of them.
nowhere.
Counts for all of them.
Yeah, it's a good European style beer. It's an independent brewery. I would like to get some Deep Ellum, which is in Dallas. Brewery in Dallas. Great beer. But
like we've mentioned
it's
before.
It's hard in the Northeast.
It's it's kind of hard for us to find stuff sometimes. I wish that states were as weird about like ordering beer to be mailed to you, but they are, and there's not a ton we can do about it. So
our state is.
Our state is, yeah.
So yeah. It's tasty. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting through the list of places and beers to have. So.
I couldn't find their coffee porter because they have a coffee one that's really good.
I love coffee porters.
Yeah.
You want to start us off this week?
I'll start this week. We can do that.
Since I'm just lounging here drinking my beer.
Yes.
I don't even have my notes in front of me.
All right, we're gonna start off with the Atlantic in Boston. What's nice is a lot of my teams played like the Pacific. A lot of the Atlantic played the Pacific.
Oh, so, really? That's weird.
We'll wrap this up real quick.
Yeah.
All right. Boston played Seattle.
Is that it?
That's their one game.
Yeah, most teams only played one game.
2 for 3 on the power play, 6 for 6 on the penalty kill. Which
what was
means
the score?
3-2. So
right.
Seattle
was pretty close though.
So Seattle went 0 for 6 on the power play, 1 for 3 on the penalty kill.
Yeah, that sucks.
See, basically done with Seattle.
Yeah, done with Seattle too.
No, the Seattle shut out the Islanders.
Well, just do the Atlantic first. We'll go quick.
Yeah, fine.
We're gonna skip most. We're gonna skip top players for most teams unless they had a very good week, like some of Clay's players did.
Yeah. So that's Boston. Buffalo lost their one game against Vegas.
Nice.
0 for 2 on the power play, 3 for 4 on the penalty kill. It was a 5-2 game for Vegas.
Nice.
Detroit went 1-1.
Wow.
Beating Anaheim in overtime, losing to the Kings in regulation. I told you they all played each other.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It's like they knew.
It's perfect.
Like they knew.
0 for 2 on the power play, 2 for 2 on the penalty kill for Detroit.
Nice.
Florida's up next with 1-1.
Wow.
They stomped the Blue Jackets.
Oh boy, they did.
Gotta mention that because Marchment became the first Florida player in their history to score 6 points in a game.
Wow.
It's like 2
really?
2 points, 2 goals, and 4 assists, something like that.
Nice.
And Anton Lundell became the first rookie to score 5 points.
Nice.
In a game with 5 assists.
You know, it is kind of weird because Florida isn't that old of a team, but they have had some pretty good players that played it. Like they had Pavel Fleury for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised he didn't get 6 points at that point, but whatever.
I believe that third line with
what a strong third line, goddamn.
It's Riley. Is that third? Sam?
Sure.
Sam Reinhart.
Sam Reinhart.
Yes.
Yeah, Sam. Yeah, it is.
We were talking about
yes, we were.
Riley Smith.
We were talking about Vegas
earlier
before we started.
Sam Reinhart. I think those 3 guys put up all 8 points.
Yes, because I believe Reinhardt also had a hat trick in that game.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Maybe not all 8, but yeah, he had a hat trick himself.
Yeah.
So minimum 4-point games from just that line.
Yeah. Pretty impressive.
But they lost to the Rangers next game.
Well, scored all their goals in the previous game.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
2 for 6 on the power play, 4 for 7 on the penalty kill. I'm not going over their overall records because I have that. We're going to talk about that later.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. Like I said, we'll look at the standings and we'll go over it then.
Montreal played 0 games this week, which is the best week they've had in a long time.
I was gonna say the same thing. It's like their best week all year.
Not all year. They had one positive week at least. They didn't lose this week. It's a good week for them.
And I guess all those weeks where the government of Canada was like, you guys shouldn't play.
8-29 and 7.
Woo, baby.
It's just so bad. All right, Ottawa was
shockingly bad.
Ottawa was 1-1. They beat Edmonton in overtime and then lost to the Islanders 1-4. 1 for 3 on the power play, 4 for 5 on the penalty kill. So,
all right,
middle of the pack there.
Excuse me.
Tampa Bay won their only game against San Jose in overtime, going 1 for 4 on the power play and 2 for 3 on the penalty kill. Toronto's last up, winning both of their games and absolutely destroying the Devils in both of them as well. Yeah. Nice little series.
Not for the Devils.
No, not for the Devils. I mean, they chased one goalie.
Yeah.
They chased Campbell in the first game, and then Mrazek shut it down. That final score was for that first game was 6-4.
Yeah.
7-1 in the second game. So, 1 for 5 on the power play, 6 for 6 on the penalty kill. Mitch Marner had 3 goals, 4 assists over those 2 games, and Austin Matthews had 4 goals and 2 assists over those 2 games. So, that's crazy.
You know what's crazy is, like, when the Penguins play the Devils, it's always a close, stupid-ass game.
It's because division.
I know, I hate it. Anybody else plays them, they stomp them. Dumb.
You gotta love division rivalries.
Hate the Metro. Hate it.
Do you want me to finish the Pacific, or just, do you want to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Because that was
go ahead.
10 minutes?
Yeah. Not even.
Cool. Alright. Talked about Anaheim already. They lost to Detroit in overtime. 0 power plays. So no power plays, and then 1 for 1 on the penalty kill. Calgary won both their games against Dallas and Arizona, respectively, scoring 4. It was 4-3. That was a come from behind 4-3 right there. Scoring all 4 goals in. Sorry, 1 goal in the first period, 3 goals in the third period to come from behind to win.
Right on.
And then Arizona was a 4-2 win.
Nice.
0 for 6 on the power play, 4 for 4 on the penalty kill, and that's Calgary. Edmonton was 1-1. Said their loss to Ottawa in overtime, and they beat Washington outright. 1 for 4 on the power play, 4 for 5 on the penalty kill.
You okay?
You good?
Did you get some peanut butter up your nose? You're okay.
You're fine.
Sorry, my dog was snorting in the background. Edmonton?
Yeah, well, I think I just finished Edmonton.
Okay.
All right, LA's up. Mentioned their 5-3 win against Detroit. 0 for 2 on the power play, 1 for 1 on the penalty kill. Already talked about San Jose's 1 loss to Tampa. At least it was in overtime. 1 for 3 on the power play, 3 for 4 on the penalty kill. Seattle had 2 games. Already talked about Boston. They shut out the Islanders with Grubauer's first shutout season.
Yay!
0 for 8 on the power play.
That's Seattle's first ever shutout.
I believe it is.
No, it is. Because I saw it on Twitter.
Oh, yeah?
They were making a big deal about it.
Yeah. First ever shutout.
They're like, it's our first ever shutout, everybody.
Woo!
Historic.
2 for 4 on the penalty kill.
Alright.
That's not good.
No.
Going 1 for 3 against Boston, not good.
No, that's pretty bad.
Vancouver, 1-1.
Hey!
Win over Chicago, lost to Nashville. 0 for 6 on the power play.
Good. I hope everybody beats Chicago.
Still not good. They made it worse.
I know. We don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Their owner's a dum-dum. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, their owner made it worse.
Yeah.
Basically, dug himself a deeper hole. 4
Yeah.
for 5 on the penalty kill.
Yeah.
And last up is Vegas. We talked about their win over Buffalo. 1 for 4, and then 2 for 2. That's it. the games.
That's it. All right. Well, let me go through mine right quick. Let's start with the Metro, where the Carolina Hurricanes played exactly 0 games this week.
They got a game tonight.
Yeah, they do. They do play tonight. Tonight is the night. We're recording on Monday. Tonight's the night that everybody's restarting after the All-Star break.
Yep.
So, did you watch any of the All-Star?
None of it.
It's kind of dumb.
I heard everyone booed Tom Wilson, including...
I didn't have the sound on.
Including Kuznetsov.
That's pretty funny, actually. If Kuznetsov booed him, was like, boo, fuck you. You're playing on the same team as me.
Yeah.
The skills competition, I think, is the best part of the All-Star weekend, but...
Well, they made the breakaway thing stupid.
Well, I actually think it's kind of fun that they, put on, a little show for everybody. Each guy tries to figure out, a fun breakaway thing.
No, that's cool.
Yeah. But the fact that Alex Pietrangelo won...
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure he only won because the All-Star game was in Vegas.
Yes.
Everybody should go watch what Trevor Zegras did in the shootout, or the breakaway competition, because it was
so stupid.
It was really dumb, but it was awesome.
No, I don't know how he did it.
It was actually very impressive.
I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, I don't know.
If he actually was blindfolded, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Without
blindfolding,
if you could see
it was
through
still
that,
pretty impressive.
You could still see through that blindfold. What he did was still blows my mind.
I agree. Well, it's dumb. I mean, it doesn't mean anything at all, really. But the skills competition, I always think is fun.
No, it's the same as the dunk contest. You can see some really cool dunks.
But the same thing with all All-Star games in every single sport is nobody really tries.
Yeah, the Pro Bowl was this week too.
The Pro Bowl, I didn't watch the Pro Bowl, but I heard it was even bad for the Pro Bowl this year. They were basically playing touch football. But anyway, I digress. But games start again tonight.
Yeah.
Which is Monday. Moving on to Columbus, who played that one game against Florida this week, where they lost 8-4.
Yep.
0 for 2 on the power play, 2 for 3 on the penalty kill on that one. Hey, pretty good penalty kill night.
With putting up 8 points,
But then they lit up 5 goals.
Yeah.
New Jersey, as Clay mentioned, had a home-and-home against Toronto and lost both games by a combined score of 13-5.
Mm-hmm.
They were 0 for 6 on the power play in those 2 games and 4 for 5 on the penalty kill. Again, not bad penalty kill numbers. But they gave up 12 5-on-5 goals, if not any shorthanded goals in that game.
Right.
Wolf. The Islanders were 1-1 this week. They beat Ottawa, like Clay said, and they got shut out by Seattle, also like Clay said. They were 1 for 3 on the power play in those 2 games and 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. The Rangers had 1 game, and they beat Florida, like Clay mentioned. 3 for 5 on the power play, 2 for 3 on the penalty kill.
3 for 5 is really good.
Yeah, they scored a lot on the power play in that game. I wonder if, I think a lot of teams were coming into those last games before the All-Star break, pretty gassed.
Yeah.
Because especially after the All-Star break, the schedule is, very compressed. Because a lot of teams have a lot of games to make up. I think the Islanders that I just mentioned, I think we mentioned this a couple times before, they have to play 50 games in 95 days or something like that.
They play every other day.
For the rest of the season. Yeah, so unfortunately, they're in a pretty big hole in the standings as it is. I don't know that they'll be able to dig themselves out of that, but...
Chris Kreider put himself in Ovechkin for the Rocket Richard. He's got 33 goals.
I can't believe Chris Kreider has scored that much this year.
Killing.
I know, but quietly so. Everybody's talking about Ovechkin's doing great at 35 or how old he is at this point.
Yeah.
And McDavid and Draisaitl or whatever, but Chris Kreider is tied for the lead in goals, and he's just
tied.
he's in the lead.
Up.
He's in the lead for the goals, and it's just the Rangers are just doing so well this year.
Yeah.
Good on him. The Flyers beat Winnipeg, so this is the Flyers' most positive week, I think, in a couple of months, where they won the 1 game that they played. They did go 0 for 4 on the power play, but 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. Pittsburgh lost to Washington in overtime, 4-3. Pittsburgh was 3 for 5 on the power play, and they ended up losing that game. and 1 for 2 on the penalty kill. I will say, Did you watch that game?
I watched that game. That was crazy.
Boy, did Pittsburgh just really outplay Washington for most of that game, but then just gave up a bunch of goals.
Yeah. So it was weird because
Pittsburgh outshot them like 40 to 20 or
also,
something.
like the refs were playing super by the book.
Yeah.
Until like halfway through the game, and then they just put away the whistles.
Well, I think it was because Pittsburgh scored 3 power play goals, and they were like, "Oh, we can't do that anymore."
They gave up a shorthanded, like.
Yeah. That's true. They did. The first goal of the game, I don't remember who on Washington was, but it was
down.
It was a shorthanded goal,
right.
But then Pittsburgh immediately scored on the power play right afterwards, so it was just back 1-1. But it was kind of a crazy game where Pittsburgh controlled most of the game, and then Washington just would like score all of a sudden. So frustrating game as a Pittsburgh fan, but I think the Penguins were just kind of, like I said, most teams were just kind of gassed going into the All-Star break. So we'll see if they can pick it back up afterwards. Washington was 1-1 this week. Like I said, they just beat Pittsburgh, and then they lost to Edmonton. They were 1 for 5 on the power play in those 2 games, and 2 for 6 penalty kill.
Oh, it was so bad.
That was mostly the Pittsburgh game, but they did give up a power play goal to Edmonton as well.
They were down. They were down 3-0 in that Edmonton game.
They did come back to tie it.
Edmonton was up 3-0 in the first 10 minutes.
They did come back to tie it, but then Edmonton scored a couple more to seal the deal.
Well, that 5th one was empty net.
Oh, okay. That one is just. Moving on to the Central Division, Arizona went 1-1 this week.
Yes, they did.
They beat Colorado in a shootout.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty impressive.
I actually watched that game.
Yeah, I watched the end of that game.
Yeah. It was a good game.
And then they turned around and lost to Calgary. 0 for 4 in the power play in those 2 games, and 6 for 6 on the penalty kill. Chicago 0-2 this week.
Good.
Vancouver beat them 3-1, and Minnesota shut them out 5-0. They were 0 for 3 on the power play, 4 for 5 on the penalty kill. I guess let's just touch on the whole Rocky Wirtz thing. Rocky Wirtz is Chicago's owner. In some sort of interview that he was doing with, I think, most of the executive people.
It was a town hall to address.
Oh, that's what it was.
That's what it was. And most of that town hall, they had built a lot of that good faith back. Then
they had some okay answers, and then somebody asked Rocky Wirtz about.
It wasn't.
Or no, it was just a general question.
It was the Danny. Is that the CEO?
His son.
Yeah, CEO. It was to the CEO. It wasn't to Rocky, and he cut in. It basically said nothing.
It was all about the Kyle Beach situation that we talked about earlier in this season. That horrible thing that happened to Kyle Beach, and basically Rocky Wirtz. I don't know. It was just like
we're not talking about it. We're talking about the future.
Yeah, he was just like, well, I don't want to think about it anymore. Like, but you kind of should.
Well, the question was about how they're going to prevent this from happening again in the future.
Yeah.
So
real not good answer.
Really not learning.
Look, I don't remember it word for word, but everybody should go look it up. It was a really inappropriate answer, basically.
And his son was going to actually answer the question.
Yeah, some people pointed out that his son, who is the CEO, who I assume mostly runs the team, was gonna probably give a diplomatic answer about it, but was cut off. So, although I did, was it Chicago that apparently fired their head trainer in November?
Head trainer.
For a head trainer.
Sorry, a trainer. I don't know if it was a head
Maybe
trainer.
It wasn't their head trainer, but a trainer for some sort of sexual misconduct as well. Yeah. So, at least they fired that person.
But firing doesn't actually do the job.
You're right. Anyway, Chicago's whole organization should maybe be purged. From, owner down.
Well, it was funny because he said no one from 2012 that's, responsible is still there. Rocky was part of it. Rocky's still
that's
there.
True. Yeah, that is true. So, Chicago's...
Their fans aren't feeling good right now.
Yeah, it's just getting worse. for them, and it doesn't help that they're having a really terrible season too. Colorado, on the other hand, is having a good season, but they did lose their one game this week to Arizona, like I just mentioned. It was a shootout. It is a little shameful, yeah. It is a little shameful. But before that, Colorado in the month of January, I believe it.
They tied a record, yeah.
Last time they were 15-0-1, so they have a little wiggle room,
yeah,
to lose a game or two. Dallas, on the other hand, doesn't really have that wiggle room, but they lost anyway. To Calgary, as Clay mentioned, that was their one game this week. They were 0 for 3 on the power play, 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. Minnesota had one game, and they didn't even let up a goal against Chicago. 5-0. 1 for 1 on the power play, 1 for 1 on the penalty kill. You okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. I worry about you. Nashville also won their one game this week over Vancouver, 4-2. 1 for 3 on the power play, 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. St. Louis played 0 games this week. It's just so weird that a few teams just didn't play at all this week. Winnipeg lost to Philly in their one game this week. A little shameful.
Yep.
0 for 2 on the power play, 4 for 4 on the penalty kill. And that's it for the games that happened this week, and a little bit of Rocky word stock. So, now to a little bit more fun part of this week's episode.
Standings.
The standings.
Alright, I can go first because I got it in front of me.
Okay. You don't want to look at the wild card standings, just in general?
The wild card standings are Detroit and...
No.
Nope.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay, you sure you don't want to look at the screen that I have pulled up right in front of you?
The wild card standings are Washington and Boston.
In the East?
Yeah. And
so,
in the West...
let's just say, hold on. Let's just say really quick, the Eastern Conference, all 8 playoff spots are basically sewn up.
Yeah, there's...
other than, the seeding for the playoff spots themselves, the 8 teams that are going to make the playoffs are in the playoffs right now.
Basically. Washington has 59 points.
Yes.
Boston has 55, but they've only played 43 games.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then the next closest team is Detroit, who has 46, but, like Clay just said, Boston has 4 games in hand on them.
Yeah. So,
Oof.
That's basically it.
I mean, essentially, let's go down the list just really quick.
Yeah.
In the Metro, Carolina is at number 1, tied with the Rangers technically with 64 points, but Carolina has 5 games in hand on the Rangers, so that's quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
However, I actually just read before we started that by February 21st, which is 14 days, they will both have played 50 games. So Carolina is going to play 8 games in 14 days.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And the Rangers are going to play 3 in 14 days. But anyway, so that their actual where the 2 of those teams are should be a little bit more clear in a couple of weeks. Pittsburgh is in 3rd place right now with 62 points, so only 2 points back of those guys. They do have a game in hand on the Rangers, but Carolina has 4 games in hand on them. So, Pittsburgh could be tied for 2nd, fighting for 2nd with the Rangers. In the Atlantic, Florida... Do you want to do that? Go ahead, go for it.
So, Florida's top of the Atlantic with 69 points.
Nice.
I know, with 47 games played, so they've played the most. They're tied for Detroit with the most games played.
Well, and Washington.
Yeah.
And New York Rangers.
Yes. In the Atlantic.
Gotcha.
Anaheim in the Pacific does have 48 games played. So
it's so weird.
Right? So they got 69 points. Behind them is Tampa Bay. A game in hand, but 66 points.
So Florida would still be in first no matter what.
Yes.
If they had equal games.
I've mentioned this a couple of times. We really got to start talking about Toronto.
Yeah.
Because they have 61 points and only 42 games played.
29, 10, and 3. That's crazy.
Yeah. Top 3 teams only have 10 losses.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even realize that.
Just like the top 3 teams in the Pacific only have 16 losses. It's really weird.
But, I mean, just even looking at these standings that I have up on the computer, their points percentage Toronto would be in second based off of points percentage.
So that Toronto-Carolina game tonight is going to be
Ooh,
very big.
Baby, I'm going to watch that.
Oh, me too. It's going to be big.
Might have several games on tonight.
There's only 2 games tonight, so it makes sense.
Toronto, Carolina.
Yep.
Pittsburgh plays tonight too.
They
play Boston.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's only 2 games tonight. I thought there were more for some reason.
I don't remember there being 2.
Oh, well, I'll watch both.
Cool.
Simulcast.
And then 4th place is Boston. 43 games played and 55 points. So they're solidly in 4th.
They are solidly in 4th. I guess technically Boston. No, they wouldn't catch Tampa Bay.
No.
Or they wouldn't. Yeah. So and then 4th in the Metro is Washington, who has 59 points with 47 games played. So Boston could pretty easily overtake Washington.
Yeah,
those are the 2 wild card teams right now. And then, like we said, the closest team after that is Detroit, who has 46 games and 47 games played.
And then and then the Blue Jackets are.
Yeah, and then Columbus is 41 points in 43 games. So, like we said, barring a major meltdown from one of these teams, those are the 8 teams that are making the playoffs.
100%.
Now the standings order, and who plays who,
up in the air.
That could be up in the air. But the East is like weirdly already sewn up with.
Yep.
I think this is the earliest the East has basically had their 8 playoff teams in a while.
Yeah.
Because usually it's the East that's very close.
In the open.
The East is normally pretty wide open, but this year there have been some teams that are
bad.
Bad, and like some of them are shockingly bad, like Philly and the Islanders. I mean the other teams down there we're not that shocked by, but
So
Montreal down at the bottom, 23 points.
Yep.
The next worst team is Ottawa with 32. Oh boy, Montreal. Not good. Let's move over to the West, though. And I'll start with the Central. Colorado is in first. They have 68 points in 44 games played. Nashville has 60 points in 46 games played. Well, that was lucky.
Yep. Not the tail was going to catch it.
Oh, okay. So you heard that right. Colorado is up by 8 points, and they have 2 games in hand on the next closest team. So Colorado, that big month last month by Colorado is that pretty much.
Yeah.
It's Colorado's division to lose at this
100%.
point. And then after Nashville is Minnesota with 59 points, but they have only played 41 games. So they have 5 games in hand on Nashville, 3 in hand on Colorado. So they could be fairly close to Colorado. They could only, essentially, they could only be 3 points behind Colorado right now. Just everything being equal. But we'll have to see there. Minnesota very, very easily could finish in second.
100%.
And then in fourth place, currently holding the number 1 wild card spot, is the St. Louis Blues, who have 57 points in 44 games. So they're not that far back.
No, not at all.
They also have 2 games in hand on Nashville as well, so they could also very easily overtake Nashville.
So, also check out Dallas. What's their record?
Dallas has 48 points in 43 games. Yeah. So they're not quite as close as they're closer to the second wild card spot. They're still in it. But why don't you talk about the Pacific first, and then we can talk about the other contenders.
The reason I had him point out Dallas is because the Ducks are in third place in the Pacific with 55 points, but have played 48 games.
It's crazy.
So,
it's crazy
Dallas has 5 games in hand.
Yeah, but Dallas is in the Central. They can't catch Anaheim.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I
understand what you're saying.
Calgary and Edmonton have 6 games in hand, and they're in 4th and 5th, respectively.
Right.
So...
Well, even Los Angeles has 55 points in second place. They're tied with the Ducks with 47 games played. So.
And Los Angeles has a game in hand against Anaheim. Mm-hmm. So they can extend that and solidly be in the second. I've done a lot of.
Oh wow!
I
haven't looked at the Pacific standings in a while. It is much closer than I thought it was.
It's so close. But the thing is, I've looked at points percentage for like games played.
Yeah.
Both based on games played, it's Calgary and Edmonton in those top 3 spots. And honestly, Dallas has that 5th spot for the playoffs. Like
we'll see, maybe
based on points percentage.
Yeah.
Currently,
they could have that second wild card spot.
The Kings and the Ducks are out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
well, why don't you just give us a rundown of the Pacific standings right now?
Up first is Vegas.
Yep.
They are 46 games played. They have 57 points.
They do.
In second and third, we mentioned before, the Kings and the Ducks both have 55 points. So they are right there.
They do, yeah.
Vegas has 2 games in hand of the Ducks and 1 game in hand of the Kings, though.
Mm-hmm. So they could extend their lead on them, but
they're only one win ahead currently.
Yeah.
I do want to say I've played. I mainly watch soccer and used to their point system, where a win is 3 points.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of people say that they wish hockey would do that. But
I'm fine with the 2 points and then the 1 point for an overtime loss, but it just breaks my brain a little bit.
I'm okay with it because I'm used to it at this point, but I mean, theoretically, the soccer system makes more sense, But because it's 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime win, and then their overtime loss, well, essentially, is also 1 point. So, I don't know. That makes more sense to me, but I don't think hockey's going to change that anytime soon.
It's just one of those things where I don't realize it's 1 game.
Yeah.
Instead of like 2.
I mean, it would drastically change the standings.
100%. That's why I like the 2 points. It keeps it tight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It does.
And then 4th place is Calgary. 52 points with only 42 games played.
But their points percentage is almost the same as Vegas's.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have 4 games in hand on Vegas. That's crazy.
Edmonton also has 4 games in hand on Vegas, and they have 49 points. So it's all right there.
They could, they very well could be tied with Vegas. Mm-hmm. Edmonton could, and Calgary could be in first very easily.
100%.
So the Pacific is wide open. I hadn't realized that until we were looking at it because I guess I don't look at the Pacific as much as you do, obviously.
The only team that's like out of it is Seattle, and they have 34 points.
Well, and Arizona.
Oh, sorry, in the Pacific.
Okay.
I got you. Pacific Division.
Oh yeah, because San Jose is right here too.
San Jose is right there with 48 points.
Mm-hmm. But they played 46 games.
46 points.
Yeah. So I mean, the Pacific is wide open, other than Seattle. So that's pretty impressive, actually.
In their historic season.
In their historic first season. But yeah, so Dallas could sneak into that second wild card spot. They're still alive, but they got to start stringing some wins together.
Yeah.
Honestly, Edmonton has seemingly figured their shit out at least a little bit.
It's hit or miss.
Well, they're at least not losing a ton of games in a row. They're at least back to like win 1, lose 1 in overtime kind of thing. Calgary is starting to roll again like they were early in the season. The Central is fairly close. I think Colorado's... They haven't clinched anything, but unless they really come back down to earth, Colorado's going to win the Central, I would think. But these beers are also twist tops. I don't know if you noticed that. Okay. Yeah, you didn't. Okay. I noticed that when I started drinking out of it. I was like, oh, we could twist these off. He was asking for the bottle opener.
I did notice it, but
it just didn't click. Yeah. So the West playoff picture will certainly be more fun to watch unfold because we already know what's going to happen in the East.
Yeah.
Or at least we know who's going to the playoffs, barring some sort of catastrophic failure by one of those teams, which isn't out of the realm of possibilities. No. Washington's not playing particularly well. They did beat Pittsburgh, who has lost 4 games in a row as well. So
but again, it's.
But they're so far ahead at this point that I don't think any of those teams, barring a lot of injuries, are going to fall that far back. I could see Washington falling to the second wild card. I could see Pittsburgh even falling that far. Boston staying there.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the other, not the Rangers and the Hurricanes they're too good right now.
Too good.
Definitely not the Hurricanes. I think they'll win the Metro.
I don't think the Rangers are right there, up there for the Metro.
Yeah, but like I said, Carolina has 4 or 5 games in hand on them.
I get it, but they're both playing great.
But the one thing to consider going forward is the compressed schedule. Mm-hmm. That might level the playing field a lot more than people think it might.
Yeah.
And so, like, Carolina, like I said, has to play 8 games in 14 days. That's a tiring schedule.
Yeah.
And even the best teams, they still get tired eventually. Like, your legs can only last so long, and it's not like in hockey they can just like call up guys to sit guys a few games like you can in maybe baseball or something like that.
Yeah, you have the taxi squad with that.
That's not exactly what it's for, though.
Right.
It's for COVID, basically. And but the one team that really has their spot sewn up right now, or at least semi-sewn up right now, is Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, all of the other standing spots, maybe Carolina, but all of the other standing spots in all 4 divisions are up for grabs.
But again, we do want to emphasize it doesn't matter. It only matters to get to the playoffs. Once you get
doesn't
to the
matter. Yeah, the standings do not matter in the playoffs because time and time again, we've seen the President's Trophy winner, who is the best record in the regular season, just lose in the first round. How many times did that happen to Washington?
In the first round, not often.
Well, but not go that far, Like, that's happened to Washington. That's happened to Pittsburgh. San Jose was notorious for that for years, because what San Jose would do back when they were super good was they would win the President's Trophy and look fantastic, and then lose in the first round to Detroit or somebody. Excuse me. We saw it with Tampa Bay's record season a few years ago. They got swept in the first round.
Yeah.
So
they had one good period that playoffs.
Just making to the playoffs, that's all that matters.
Yep.
You don't necessarily have to feel bad if your team is the last team in. It does. Look what happened to Montreal. Montreal, who was terrible this year, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and they basically only made it because they were in the Canadian division.
The last 2 playoffs that they made.
That's true. And in the one before that, they were the 26th team in because they had that weird playoff format because of the COVID shortened season, and they bounced Pittsburgh in the first round.
They wouldn't in both seasons that they made the playoffs.
They would not have made it
in a regular season. They would not have made it.
And they beat Pittsburgh that one year and then lost, but then last year they beat
Winnipeg.
They beat Toronto.
Yep.
They beat Winnipeg, who is, a dubious team, and then they beat Vegas.
Yep.
And then they lost to Tampa Bay in the finals.
Beating Vegas.
But they beat Vegas and Toronto in the playoffs.
In 7 game series.
Yeah. It was impressive because everybody was like, well, clearly Toronto is finally going to win a playoff series for the first time in ever.
No.
And they did not. So that's all that matters, is making it to the playoffs is the main point, So it'll be fun to watch going down the stretch, especially the Western Conference, because that's just a confusing bag about who's going to make that. Because anybody could. Vancouver could still win the Pacific Division, for God's sake.
There's such a disparity just between who's games in hand and stuff like that.
Well, within the next, apparently it's supposed to be kind of equalized in the next few weeks, because that's what they're using the Olympic break to do.
Right.
Is to sort of level out the schedule. Thank God, so I don't have to keep calculating games in hand and how many points that might be if they won all of those games. Because that's how I always kind of look at the standings, is if a team has several games in hand on the team ahead of them in the schedule, I'm like, okay, well, where would they be if they won all of those games?
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, they would be ahead of that team.
Toronto would be first in the Atlantic.
Would
all their games. Oh, yeah. 5 games.
Oh, yes, they would be. Yes, they would be.
And that's why I say we need to start talking about Toronto.
Toronto is just, I've said it the last couple of weeks, just quietly having a great season, being overshadowed by Florida. And they're, pretty consistent.
29,
so far,
10, and 3.
29, 10, and 3. They're being overshadowed by the 2 Florida teams, and nobody's talking to them. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's good for
100%.
Toronto, because usually they have all of the media focused on them, because Toronto is like the center of the hockey world of Canada, and maybe the entire North America.
Yeah, it's the biggest city in Canada. So.
It's the biggest city in Canada. They love hockey there, but like the Maple Leafs just kind of have been middling.
Yeah, it's
for several seasons, for decades.
Well,
you know?
They had a bad start to the season, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, so they had nothing but negative attention at the very beginning.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Because Mitch Marner wasn't doing great.
Sorry,
Austin
I'm back on
Matthews
mic.
wasn't doing great.
That's true, yeah.
Now they're playing well.
I remember we talked about how they got blamed for everything, but Jonathan Tavares didn't get blamed for anything.
100%. Again, like I think I said this last week, the Toronto media wants the Leafs to be bad, because otherwise they don't have anything to talk about.
I think there are some cities' medias who would rather the teams be bad because it would be easier to talk about them if they were bad. And yeah, I think there's a sect of every city team's media that is probably like, I wish they were bad because it'd be just so much easier to just dunk on them all the time. Like it's so easy to dunk on like the Pittsburgh Pirates because they're so inept and they just like clearly they don't care.
I know this is a different sport, but there's no way there's going to be a baseball season this season.
No way. Yeah, it's you know what? Good. I honestly think, as much as I like football, the NFL needs a lockout too.
100%.
Because the fact that their contracts aren't guaranteed is ridiculous, and like teams can just cut them with really no repercussions for the most part, with some exceptions, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah, you need guaranteed contracts.
Yeah, like the NHL, you can't do that in the NHL.
Yeah, they're guaranteed contracts.
There's very few circumstances in the NHL where you can cut a guy and not have to pay him anymore, and it has to be something they did like super illegal,
like Mike Richards,
or Jared Stoll, or who was that defenseman on the Kings? He was a Russian guy and he got arrested for domestic violence, and they were just like, no,
we're done.
And the entire NHL was like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I can't think of his name. Yeah, whatever. He's not in the NHL anymore. He has basically been blacklisted from the NHL.
We mentioned this
and Evander Kane too. I mean, that's still up in the air, but that's in the courts because there's grievances about that right now. But San Jose essentially was able to terminate his contract because of the gambling accusations and the COVID thing too. Yeah, but that one's still in courts. But there's very few times where an NHL team can cut a guy and not have to pay that contract.
Caught at the border with a bunch of drugs.
Anyway, we don't have to. Yeah, Mike Richards.
This is like the second time we mentioned him.
It's just but like there's so many. There's not that many situations where that's happened, and like
he was able to play actually.
I know, but like the Kings were like goodbye.
Yeah.
You know, Jared Stoll, I believe, was similar. He didn't get caught at the border, but he did get caught with drugs, and I think it was also the Kings were like goodbye. You know, but in either direction.
Kings and terminating player contracts.
I mean, well, it's LA. You know, like. It would also not shock me if, like, I mean, Florida's not exactly located in Miami, but they're close.
Right.
But, like, it wouldn't surprise me if, like, guys who went and played in Miami or New York were like, oh, yeah, there's one guy on the team who just gets drugs for everybody. Yeah. You know, and so, in any direction.
We should talk about
that's the standings. So, let's talk about the trade deadline big board. I guess I'll give a shout out. This is on thefourthperiod.com. Who is it written up by? I don't see a byline on here. Maybe it's down at the bottom, but we'll see when we get down to the bottom who wrote this. But
I have one from Bleacher Report by
there's one on Bleacher Report. I like Lyle Richardson.
He's good.
Yeah. And then I have the one on The Athletic as well, pulled up by Eric Duashek. I'm sorry, I probably said that name wrong. It's Duhatschek.
That's a no.
So that's a hard net. But we're going to go with the fourth period. We'll start there.
Yep.
And then we'll look at the other ones, just see if they have anybody different. Most of these probably have the same guys on them.
It's Giroud, it's Chichron, it's Sharat.
So let's start with, they have them ranked, but I don't think the rankings are really that important. But the number one on the fourth period, we're going to start there, is Jake Chichron of the Arizona Coyotes, who, if you don't know, is a left defenseman. He's only 23.
He's very good.
And his cap hit is $4.6 million, which is also not that bad.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. He's the best player on a pretty bad team.
Yep.
So I honestly don't know if I would agree with trading him. He's only 23. If somebody blows you away with a trade offer, then
a couple of first round picks,
yeah.
a couple of hot prospects.
I've heard that the asking price for him is the same as Eichel, basically.
Yeah.
Well, the starting asking price.
So a first round.
So one or two first round, either 2 first round picks or a first and a top prospect, and then like a good young player too. So that's a lot, but Chichron might be worth it.
I didn't realize he was
23. This guy's 23. 4.6 million really isn't that bad for that guy, for a guy of his caliber, and he signed through, I believe, 2025.
Oh.
So you get that contract for like 3 years too, for the rest of this year, next year, and the year after.
A playoff caliber team. The Rangers, man.
The Rangers could swing a deal for this kid.
There's so many. I do want to mention. There's so many teams,
every team would like this guy.
Well,
but
more players on this trade block that the Rangers could swing for because they have such good cap room.
They do,
and
they have a
ton
of young guys who they maybe don't even need right now. You know, like they could dangle a guy like Kapokaka, or I'm sorry, no.
Lafreniere and Kapokaka
thank you.
Are both restricted free agents after this year?
Yeah, I don't know that I would trade either one of them because they were very high draft picks. But if you could get somebody like Jake Chichron, who is an established, because neither one of those guys have really established themselves yet. But if Arizona would take one of those guys plus a first, then another guy. For Jake Chichron, I might do it.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to do that because he's established. He's a good defenseman. You could solidify that defense core even more with Adam Fox and Keandre Miller. That defense core could be godly. So I agree with you. The Rangers should maybe try to swing this deal. I think that could be a defensive lineup. It doesn't even really matter who the other 3 guys are at that point. That's not totally correct, but those as your top 3 defensemen. That's insanity, and they're all young.
Yeah.
Chichron might be the oldest one of the 3 of them.
He is.
So eventually you would get into trouble with having to re-sign them, but they do have. They did sign Fox for, I think it was $9.5 million.
Yeah.
Which is less than I thought that he was going to be offered. Keandre Miller, I'm sure, I don't know, he'll be a restricted free agent soon, either next year or the year after. But I don't know. That would be a blockbuster, earth-shattering trade.
Oh man!
If the Rangers could pull that off.
Now, there's so many guys on this list that the Rangers could go for.
The Rangers are just very unique. The way that they have built their team, because
all of those questions that we put at the start of the season,
they have answered.
Oh.
Yeah, they have answered. So
I know there's a different player on number 2 for that list. Let's stay in Arizona and talk about Phil Kessel, because he's another.
We can talk about Phil Kessel. I don't know.
Someone like Boston.
It depends on what the ask is for Kessel, because he will never play defense. No. I'm speaking as a guy who loved him in Pittsburgh. I did. But I kind of understood why they traded him when they did, when Pittsburgh traded him. But he seems to wear out his welcome.
Yep.
Oh, I don't think Boston will trade for him. They used to have him. That was the team he started with.
Oh yeah, it was. I forgot about that.
I mean, it's different.
It's one of those
different everything there now. So maybe they would be interested in it. But
using a good offensive player for a cup run,
yeah, I think he's a UFA after this year too.
Yes.
So he would just be a rental. I don't know. I guess I can pull it up. What Boston's cap is looking like right now?
Well, Jake DeBrusk is on the block.
Oh, that's fair. That might be a fair 1-for-1, honestly.
And Arizona's floated about retaining some of that cap hit. It's like 6.8.
Yeah, they would have to retain a lot for Boston to do that, because if you look here, Boston has a cap space as far as cap-friendly, shout out cap-friendly, is aware right now they have 1.6 million. Almost 1.7 million in cap space. Right. So even if, well, actually, that might work. If Arizona retained 50% on Kessel, now you might have to throw in a sweetener of a draft pick or a prospect for them to do that.
You're obviously throwing in a sweetener if they're retained contract.
Yeah. You always have to. So it's at 6.8 right now. So that would be 3.4.
Yep.
So that would be almost double of what this is. However, I think Jake DeBrusk is almost there to make that an even swap. Well, actually, so if they just took Phil Kessel, that would be about 1.7 over the cap. And I think DeBrusk, let's see, because it's right here. It should be. There you are. Oh! Jake DeBrusk is getting paid much more than I thought he was. He's getting paid 3.6.
Yeah.
So that would be Jake DeBrusk plus maybe a second might do it. Honestly, because Arizona right now, I'm sure, is just trying to hoard draft picks.
Yep.
Because this draft is supposed to be fairly deep.
And they got so many picks already.
They have a lot of picks already. Oh, and you know what? I think I saw an article saying Arizona would take on bad contracts for draft picks or prospects. So, Jake DeBrusk for Phil Kessel. Jake DeBrusk plus
how they got
something.
Ekman Larson.
That's true. Jake DeBrusk plus might get you Phil Kessel. Now, it might be kind of a lateral move. I mean, DeBrusk isn't really having that great of a season.
No.
He's certainly on all of these trade lists as well.
Yep.
But I honestly think Boston probably needs a second line center more than they need. Like a winger.
Right.
Because Kessel can't play center.
No.
Now, there is another guy.
If you're about to say Claude Giroux.
You want to talk about Claude Giroux?
There's no way Boston can do it.
His cap hit is far too high.
It's 8.4.
It's 8.4. I don't know that you can get... Philly might retain that. Like 50% of that. So everybody knows, in case you don't know, the max that any team can retain on a trade of a contract is 50% of that contract.
So, Claude Giroux's played his entire career for Philadelphia.
He has, yes. He is their captain.
They're absolute dog poop this year. And will be for a long time.
Did you see... First of all, he won MVP at the All-Star game.
Yes.
For whatever reason. It doesn't matter. He got a car. But anyway, after he won, in the interview, they asked him about the trade rumors.
Yeah.
How shitty is that?
I didn't watch that interview.
It's such a shitty thing to do to a guy who just won MVP at the All-Star game, and you're like representing the team that he's played for his entire career, and be like, "Well, we heard that you're getting traded, maybe." And I didn't watch the interview, but I saw people being like, "That was so hard to watch."
Oh, yeah, cool. He's got a full no-move clause.
He does. So if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he's not going anywhere.
He is an undrafted free and restricted free agent.
Yes.
At the end of the season. So
unrestricted free agent.
I started.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So he could just walk. I don't see him staying on Philadelphia next year.
I don't know. I guess I don't know Claude Giroux's attitude that well. Obviously, neither one of us are Flyers fans. We don't know. Because if you were like, Evgeny Malkin is also a UFA after this year, but I would bet that he resigns with the Penguins at some point.
It's hard because
Drew's their captain too,
but also comments from the GM and the president talking about just needing to retool instead of full rebuild.
I don't know that I believe that.
Are not good looks in the sense of like, oh, you're just going to be Chicago next year. You think you're good, better than you are.
Well, Philly was the sexy pick at the beginning of the year to be like they're going to be in the playoffs, definitely. And then even we agreed like they might at least get close to the playoffs. I don't think anybody predicted them to be quite as bad.
No, not at all.
My dog.
A full hug.
My dog is just fully hugging Clay right now. Oh, it's really cute, actually.
Good to see you too.
Oh my God, that's very cute. Actually, she misses her Uncle Clay. Oh, what a good girl. Anyway, back to I got. She's like rubbing her face on his face.
I'm fine. I got this.
Yeah, no, I know you do. I'm just blown away. I'm just blown away by how cute she is. Yeah, Boston is gonna have, if they try to make a run at Drew, they're gonna have to be a little creative with what they do. Like they might have to shift, even if they sent DeBrusk. That's not gonna be enough.
No, not at all.
So,
does DeBrusk have any sort of no move clause?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they can just trade him to whoever they want to.
Well, I mean, he's also got, he's requested a trade.
Yeah, he did, but I think Boston said that they would try to do their best to find a trade for Jake DeBrusk, but they're not going to bend over backwards and take nothing for him.
Oh, no.
He hasn't been very good for Boston the last couple of years, but DeBrusk is still only 25.
Right. He could totally.
He could blossom somewhere else.
He might just need to change of scenery.
Yeah, he might just need a change of scenery, like Clay said. But yeah, I don't know. Boston really doesn't have that much cap space to work with, so they're.
My bad.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened there. I was looking at you, and I just heard. So yeah, they do have all of their draft picks for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I guess not. They don't have their third round draft pick, but they do have Calgary's third round draft pick. I don't know. Boston will have to get a little bit
creative
if they want to go after anybody. Now, do they need to go after anybody? I don't know. Boston's playing okay right now.
Yeah, but they could still use improvement.
They could certainly shore up their center position because just looking at their forwards listing on Cap Friendly right now, obviously Patrice Bergeron is their first line center. No arguing that. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. But then the next best center I can see on the list here is Charlie Coyle.
Is Taylor Hall a center or is he?
No, he's a winger. So Coyle, while not being a bad player by any means, I would not call him a second-line center.
Right.
I would call him a third-line center, basically. And then the other guys that they have listed here as centers are Craig Smith. They do have Nick Foligno, but he's a shell of his former self.
And he has had some injury problems this season.
And then Thomas Nosek and Curtis Lazar. So those are not exactly mind-blowing options that they have. They do have Eric Howla as well, but I don't know. He's listed down here on their non-roster list, so I don't know what's going on with him. So I think center is certainly something that they need to look at, but I don't know. They don't have a lot of money to work with in Boston.
For Philadelphia, everyone is on the trade block except for Carter Hart and
Carter Hart. Yeah, let's look at Philly real quick. Philly apparently has $4,490 in cap space. That is nothing. That's crazy. I think Philly should do their best to blow it up.
Yeah.
They could probably get a good haul for Claude Giroux, and he might come back in the summer anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
So if he is okay with it, obviously, as Clay said, he has a full no movement clause. I would try to recoup some losses not losses, but recoup some stuff for him. I mean, I might even try to peddle James Van Riemsdyk to people. He doesn't have a no move clause at all. Yeah. He doesn't have any no trade clause.
You need to blow it up.
Yeah, I can sing. I would keep the younger guys that they have, like Konechny. I wouldn't trade Konechny. He's very good. And $5.5 million for several years of Konechny. Keep that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, I would maybe keep Provorov, their youngest defenseman, or one of their younger defensemen. But, like, I don't know, somebody might take Rasmus Ristolainen from you. I don't know. Maybe.
I wouldn't. He played bad on Buffalo.
But they traded a first-round pick for him.
Yeah. That's on you, boo.
Yeah, maybe somebody would take Keith Yandel as a good veteran.
Yeah.
Third line defenseman, but boy, oh boy, Philly's in a lot of trouble. Yeah. Let's go back to the trade list right now. Ben Sharat of the Montreal Canadiens. He's, on a pretty bad team, but he's one of the guys that's like,
he's playing
shining pretty well. I heard recently that they're asking for a first-round pick for Ben Sharat, which, I mean get whatever you can get. I mean,
fair. And also, sticking with Montreal, Jeff Petrie is the other defender who has requested a trade.
Jeff Petrie has requested a trade, yeah.
Done in Canada.
Yeah, some really... it's been...
I mean, his wife moved back to Michigan, so he's dealing with lingering injuries, and his support group is no longer with him.
And, like, the media and the fans have been throwing him under the bus.
He has been playing bad.
So has everybody on Montreal.
I will also say, like, the whole Montembeault getting blown up thing. Like, that was
that too. Yeah.
And he's like, what, $6 million and something?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think he's $6.25 million.
He's still very good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he's very serviceable, but that contract is a little high. High. If they retained now. He is signed for 3 more years on that contract. So it might take quite a lot for Montreal to retain that money for 3 more years.
Yeah.
But if they retained, then it would be 3,125.
Yep.
So that's not that bad, but that could get expensive for other teams that are trying to get Petrie. I would take Petrie on my team. He's a solid defenseman.
Very good defenseman.
Yeah, I don't know. Montreal should try to trade whatever they can as well. I've heard rumors that maybe Gallagher is out there as well, but he pretty much has a no-move clause as well, and they just re-signed him.
Basically, everyone but Suzuki is on that block.
Yeah, so there could be a lot of guys leaving Montreal as well, which I kind of get, because they did let Kotkaniemi go. For that whole stupid situation, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't trade Alex Romanov, the defenseman. He's only 22. I wouldn't trade their like younger guys, but any of their like mid to late 20s guys or 30s guys. If anybody wants them, I'd be like, wait, what do you want from? Like, oh, okay, second round pick. Go ahead, I'll take that. Yeah. So I bet somebody might want Paul Byron. He's a fair player. He's very fast. What? Oh, keep moving? Okay, sorry. I can talk about this all day.
I know you can. I realized that, like, when we were talking about Boston.
Yeah. Let's talk about John Klingberg real quick.
He's also requested
a trade.
He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season.
I want to say his contract is $6 million as well, or thereabouts. So, let's just look real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. 4.25 for John Klingberg.
Think about the Rangers going for that.
He's going to get traded.
Oh my.
John Klingberg will get traded. I don't know where. Maybe Rangers if they miss out on Chichron, but they could probably get something good for Klingberg, first round pick, top prospect, something 100%. Like that.
Again, the reason he's on the trade block is because his contract negotiations have stalled,
out,
and he is not happy about how they have stalled. So he's just like, I'm not signing again. You should trade me if you want anything for me.
Well, with Dallas, it's just like they have Miro Heiskanen, so like Klingberg is kind of a luxury.
Oh, 100%.
So I kind of get it. Moving on to another defenseman, Calvin DeHaan from Chicago.
Let's just talk about Chicago because they're talking about blowing it up.
Yeah, they got DeHaan. Here, I'll pull them up on Cap Friendly real quick.
They got DeHaan, they got Strome. There's talk about trading Fleury.
Fleury, I bet they could get something for, but Fleury has a
8
partial no trade clause. I think it's 8 or 10 teams, something like that, where there is 8 or 10 teams that he will not go to.
Yep, he can list out the 8 teams.
Yeah, well, he has to give them at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so
let's see, anybody else on this list is. Oh, I've heard. I think maybe Dominic Kubali might be on this list too.
There's been talk about Fleury going to Washington. Washington's.
Please God, no.
Well, it's one of the things like Washington doesn't.
Washington might be on that list though.
He doesn't have any cap. Washington doesn't have any cap.
That's true as well. Fleury's contract is I think $7 million.
They don't have a cap room.
Yeah.
And he's also 37. Don't do that.
He's a UFA after this year. But still,
he's 37.
I mean, so he would be a rental. There's some thought Fleury might retire after this year too. Right. So we'll have to see. I've seen Dominic Kubali come up, which is kind of confusing to me because he's only 26 and he's an RFA after this year. But they could probably get quite a bit for him. If they traded him.
There's a lot of talk about teams like players in Vancouver with the new GM and AGM.
JT Miller is one that keeps coming up.
Connor Garland's coming up, even though they just got him.
They just got Connor Garland though.
But he was bait for the Ekman-Larsson.
True, that's true.
It's just one of those things where
essentially speaking, teams that are doing bad will probably try to peddle whatever value they have.
Yes.
That's kind of how the NHL trade deadline works. I mean, that's how any sports trade deadline works.
And their president, Jim Rutherford, is known for wheeling dealing.
Yeah, he's a wheeler and a dealer, believe me. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
So, JT was on the trade block, was off of it.
Yeah, he's on and off.
Now that they got a new GM and AGM, we'll see.
We'll see. Now, realistically, the trade deadline is a month and a half away, so there's plenty of time for stuff to happen.
Miller's been linked to the Wild a lot.
And the Rangers, too.
Yeah.
His former team.
Right.
The Rangers.
The Rangers are in everywhere on this deadline.
That's true. I mean, like Clay said, they have a ton of cap space and young guys to pull from. And plus a guy who actually requested a trade in Vitaly Kravtsov, I think his name is, who is a fair young player, but he is, because how stacked the Rangers are right now, he's not getting that much play time. Yeah. So I think he actually went back to Russia, so he might be traded as well. But he could get value. He could be a part of a trade for Chichron. Or let's stay in the Pacific Northwest since we were talking about Vancouver. Mark Giogano is another guy who's out there.
He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
That's true.
I understand that. But you made him your first ever captain.
I know.
It's the dumbest thing in the world.
It would be pretty dumb to trade him unless somebody blew you away with a trade offer. He's 38. Wow.
Exactly.
He's still good, and he has a modified no trade clause, so that's probably
I think it's
8 or 10 teams again.
But he's your first captain.
He's your first captain. Yeah, it wouldn't really look that good, but I don't know. I could also see them trying to peddle maybe Chris Driedger too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it'd be just because he's been okay. And
he hasn't.
He hasn't been that okay, but there's a bunch of teams who need either a goalie or a backup goalie.
Yeah, 100%.
Like Edmonton comes to mind. Anytime you talk about a goalie, Edmonton is going to be at the top of that list.
Let's jump to Vegas real fast because Vegas has $10 million that they need to free up because Jack Eichel is now practicing contact. He's coming back.
So he's going to be back
soon.
sooner rather than later.
And that's $10 million that they need to free up.
So their top trade chip, I guess, to free up at least half of that money is Riley Smith, who I don't know how eager they are to trade him, but they already traded Freichel, so they have him. So
it's Dadonov has, I think it's $5 million as well. Marcia Shot's also $5 million.
I don't think they're going to trade Marcia. So
well, Riley Smith is, I believe, an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
Could be.
He doesn't have a no move clause. And
they'll probably trade Riley Smith first.
Yep.
Just because of that fact. Yeah, he does not have a no trade clause at all.
So
Dadonov has a I didn't know it says Dadonov has a 10-team no trade list. But I could see them moving those two guys.
Yeah. Shoot.
Because I don't think they're having a tremendously good season, regardless. So.
Giogano? Who they just re-signed, extend?
Yeah. I don't know.
It doesn't work. Don't worry about it. We talked about it last week.
I don't remember.
But that is some lower contract guys that they can free up. Broussard is on that block. He's probably gone because of
Broussard. Yeah, he is 2.35.
2.35, and they just extended Thompson. So you're gone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so there is certainly some movement coming from Vegas, probably maybe within the next week or two.
100%.
So that should be interesting to look at. Let's see. What else?
Going to be back for a playoff push.
He is. That'll be scary for Vegas.
For everyone that's not Vegas.
For everyone that's not Vegas. Let's just take a look at this. Let's talk about Columbus real quick.
Yep.
Because on this trade board that I'm looking at right now, they have Eunice Korpisalo and Max Domi ranked up there. Korpisalo is a UFA at the end of this year. Domi's just kind of not really done too much on the Blue Jackets.
He's played well.
He's played okay. But so those are two guys that I think some teams would take a flyer on, especially Korpisalo. He's an alright goalie.
Yeah.
Paging Edmonton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Domi would be a good depth piece to add.
Mm-hmm.
His contract's 5.3. Domi is also a UFA at the end of the year. I don't know. They could probably get something for Domi. Definitely get something for Korpisalo.
It's one of those things where if you have an undrafted free agent at the end of the year, that you're not really...
You're losing for nothing, basically.
Exactly.
Especially if you're not making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point in keeping that guy?
So you got to try to get something from him.
Just looking through this list. They have Rickard Rakell listed here on Anaheim. I don't think they're going to trade him.
No.
Unless they start really falling out of the playoff spot, which I don't... It's close enough over there that I don't think Rakell is going to get traded. They have PK Subban listed. Maybe, but he's a $9 million cap hit.
No one's
I don't think anybody's going to take on PK Subban.
If he played well, sure. But he's not.
Travis Dermot of the Maple Leafs is listed here, I think, because I don't think he requested a trade, but he's not playing that much.
No.
So he is a trade chip. Basically, he's on this list because he's Toronto's best trade chip.
Yeah.
So they could probably use him if they're adding anybody. Hudobin, yeah. Dallas. I can't believe nobody took him when he was put on waivers. It's pretty surprising to me.
I think it's surprising. A lot of people called it.
I can't believe Edmonton didn't take him. Really, I really can't.
No.
Maybe it was a contract thing. I don't know.
It's $3 million.
I guess I have cap friendly up right now, but I don't know what Edmonton's cap looks like right now. Let's look. They have exactly $0 available. So anything Edmonton does is going to have to be money in, money out. Mm-hmm. And I don't know who they would trade on here that anybody would want. I've seen that Kaylor Yamamoto. They might try to trade, but he's only 23, and I understand that he hasn't really clicked with Edmonton, but that seems kind of extreme to me to trade a guy who's only 23 years old.
Right.
But I guess you might be able to throw him in for something, but you have to move other money. Maybe Warren Fogle. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what Edmonton's gonna do. They have zero. They have zero cap.
Edmonton's screwed.
Oh man. God, they have Duncan Keith. I keep forgetting they have Duncan Keith.
Really?
It's such a bad trade. Also on here is Alex Georgiev from the Rangers, who I think we discussed it earlier in the season, may or may not have requested a trade.
I don't remember.
But I think he denied it, but somebody in the media was saying like he did, or like he was thinking about it, or some whatever.
I mean, Shesterkin
is playing very, very well for them.
He's the guy. So Georgiev, if he wants to be the guy, he's got to go to somewhere else.
He's got to go somewhere else. Somebody might trade him. Again, Edmonton. But what would Edmonton trade? Maybe Mikko Koskinen, who is also on here. Koskinen is an okay backup.
Yes.
But too often is he tried to be forced into a starting position for Edmonton, and it's just really not worked out.
He's their only goalie right now. That's
so stupid.
That's the thing. That's why he's being thrown under the bus so hard. He's their guy.
Yeah, he's all they have, really. Also on here, confusingly, is Vladimir Tarasenko. They're not going to trade Vladimir Tarasenko. Not anymore. I know at the beginning of the year he was asking about it, or maybe thinking about requesting a trade. Not at this point. He's had a very good season for St. Louis, and St. Louis is very much in a playoff spot.
100%. They're not getting rid of one of their best players.
No, they would not trade him. I don't think. And then the last one was Giroux, who we've already talked about.
Thomas Hertl is also is also a thought, just because he's unrestricted at the end of the year. And
but I think as long as now this might change in a month, but San Jose isn't that far out of a playoff spot right now.
No, they're not.
So I don't think they're going to trade him while they're still within striking distance. They might not trade him at all. They might try to re-sign him, especially with that money that they theoretically getting from getting rid of Evander Kane.
Yep.
They might use that to re-sign him. Another guy, we're switching lists right now, moving over to the Athletic. Another guy that I just noticed wasn't on the other list. Andreas Janssen from the Devils. Maybe. He's a fair two-way player. Here's Kubali, like I was talking about.
I think we kind of covered everything.
Vladislav Nemesnikov, maybe, from Detroit. Yeah, there's just some other guys on here. It'll be an interesting trade deadline. There's
Excited for the next month.
The next month is going to be really interesting in the league because some teams are going to be playing a lot.
Detroit, I think it's Detroit. Only plays 4 games the next 2 weeks.
That doesn't surprise me. It's the same thing with the Rangers.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, Carolina, among I'm sure many other teams, are going to be playing a lot of games in these next 2 weeks because
100%.
this 2 weeks they were supposed to be at the Olympics.
And there was supposed to be a break.
But because of COVID, that didn't happen, and because of COVID, they had to readjust the schedule so much that it kind of worked out that they're not going. But, it's a bummer that they're not going.
Right. Olympics are going on right now.
The Olympics are going on right now. I'm almost certain that I saw a female snowboarder break her arm the other day. I'm almost certain. She put on a very strong face. The way she was holding her arm, I'm almost 100% certain that she broke her arm. I believe it was I think it was a Japanese snowboarder, female snowboarder. Just the way that she fell, she put her arm out to brace herself, which you were not supposed to do.
Never do.
And she came up and she was holding it against her side the whole time on the way down.
Yeah, how you deal with an injury. Yeah.
Now, again, props to her for putting on a strong face, but she definitely broke her arm. Anyway, I guess we'll wrap up there. That was fun. I mean, I could talk about trade speculation all day.
I know you
since
can.
we talked about Boston for 15 minutes. And maybe when we get closer to the trade deadline, maybe we'll even do a extra episode.
We might.
Maybe.
We might have to.
Maybe just because I want to talk about it forever.
Might have to.
Now, the trade deadline the last few years has been kind of boring. Nothing's really happened on that day. It usually happens in the couple of weeks leading up to it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. There's certainly plenty of names that would be interesting to see if they moved, and there's always like a shocker of a trade.
Always one.
As well, where it's like, I can't believe they traded him. There was not even speculation that guy was going to get traded.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It should be fun, and we hope you join us here for it.
Yeah.
Give us a review, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us all of that, please. And let anybody you know who likes hockey, let them know about us.
Yeah.
And so we'll see you guys next week. Same puck time.
Same puck place.
Same puck place.
Bye.